Hi, this is Renee Cormier from the Fractional Referral Network. Today I am chatting with Doug Brown from Manage to Retain. Doug is an employee retention specialist, works with businesses who really want to up their employee retention game. They want to have employees that are engaged, that love the work they do and show up all the time when needed and otherwise. How are you today, Doug? Thank you for coming.
I'm doing well, Renee, and thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I look forward to our discussions and chatting a little further about this topic. So,
Yeah, it's an important topic. I've had
it is, and
lots
growing.
of yes, and employee engagement is everything. It costs companies billions of dollars every year, and so not being able to hold on to people costs companies a lot of money. What are the often overlooked impacts of employee turnover and absenteeism on different departments, companies, and organizations?
Yeah, first of all, I think you mentioned employee engagement, and that's also a critical component. We often talk about turnover and absenteeism, but employee engagement is also directly related to those challenges and the loss of good employees. So I think it has to be included. It's a core element. But as far as the employee retention and absenteeism, I think one of the things that's often overlooked is the indirect costs. And I think people are well aware of the direct costs. And by direct costs, you have maybe ads that you're posting on LinkedIn. You might have a recruiting or a headhunting agency that you're working with, and there's costs associated with that. There might be overtime that you have to bring in people to fill a role or to do a job. So these are all direct costs, and there's a few others as well, of course. And I think they are calculated, and people, when they're assessing turnover and absenteeism, but often what I find is that they overlook and discount the indirect costs. And in many cases, they're just as much or higher than the direct costs.
So what should a business owner or fractional working for a company trying to improve results? What should they be aware of when assessing these challenges?
Okay, well, I'll explain a little bit more maybe about the indirect cost, because I think when you're looking at whether turnover is a challenge enough that you want to make it a priority to retain your talent, one of the key questions business owners are asking is, well, what is the ROI? What is the return? Can I get back if I'm going to invest in retention strategies? Can I secure a return or get my money back or be ahead of the game, so to speak? And that's why those indirect costs are so important. So I think they need to be aware of the indirect costs and how they affect their business operations and impact the company in general. So let me elaborate a little bit more on that. So they can be substantial. They're not always visible, but these costs affect like overall productivity and morale. So as an example, loss of productivity. Reduced productivity can lead to missed deadlines. It can lead to slow project execution, these kind of things. Decreased employee morale. Let's consider for a moment the remaining employees. Often they're asked to take on additional workloads if somebody leaves and resigns. And they have to do that maybe until the role is filled again. But that can affect morale, and it can lead to lower overall performance and productivity from the remaining employees. Then you get things like loss of institutional knowledge. If you've got a very high performing employee and they walk out the door, you're losing their knowledge of the organization, you're losing some of their contacts, you're losing their experience. All of these things can impact your business and how it operates. You might face reduced satisfaction from customers or loyalty within customers. The loss of experienced employees can damage relationships, and they may not have the same communication and organization and attention to their account that they had in the past. You can see impacts on brand and company reputation. If an organization is losing a lot of employees, maybe the word gets out that it's not a good place to work for, and that affects the hiring practices and your ability to recruit. You could get into opportunity costs where you have delays in strategic initiatives. You can get in into administrative burdens. So there's quite a lengthy list in that indirect costs, and that's important to recognize. The other thing I'll mention is, because in addition to turnover, I also like to chat about absenteeism, and that, I think they're directly related. A lot of times the solutions for retention also can be effective in helping reduce absenteeism. But I think, again, that executives and owners have to be aware that sickness always isn't related to an employee feeling unwell or feeling sick. You see other issues like mental health challenges. You say workplace conflicts and toxic environments that maybe they call in sick. Maybe they don't get along with their boss. Maybe there's commuting issues, they're facing with the drive. Maybe there's stress and burnout issues. Maybe there's childcare responsibilities or family responsibilities. They could even be looking for new careers. They could be looking for a new job or have an interview, and they're calling in sick from their present job. So when you consider all that, and absenteeism rates are on the rise as well in some organizations. So if that gets up to 3, 4, 5%, there can be tremendous costs involved with that as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, good. Thank you. So business leaders have objectives that they need to address. How can they align their vision so that they've got a team that's really, um, engaged in bringing those initiatives to life?
Yeah, another good question. I think fractional executives, for one point, I think they have to understand the ramifications, as well as business owners, of employee turnover and absenteeism. And by what I mean by that is that how is it impacting your organization? And you can see that you're not achieving goals, or you can see that your costs are up, or you can see that clients have maybe left or are not buying as much. But dig a little deeper. Try and get to the bottom of why it's happening. And was it because of poor customer service, or was it because you had to pay overtime and the costs are up in that department? There's many reasons that kind of affect the inability to achieve some of your goals. So here's a few things that owners and executives always have to keep in mind. They have to align the organizational value and vision with some of the people issues within their organization. And I think that's important to understand and act on as you progress. There's a lot of important steps you can take related to data-driven decisions. And by that, I mean, once you understand, and if you can collect the proper feedback from employees to understand the issues and the challenges and the frustrations and the disconnects, that can help you plan strategy to build solutions. So I think that's important. I think it's important as well to develop strong talent retention and engagement strategies, and know why you're doing this. Why, how is it impacting the organization? How is it impacting cost? And I think that's important to really make progress within it. We see a lot of organizations now focusing a lot on talent acquisition and hiring, and they're spending a lot of resources. They even have executive positions now, director of talent acquisition or VP. But I don't see as much investment in the talent retention in terms of the resources and the budgets and the strategies. So that's important as well. I think it's important to build leadership capacity and capability and trust. So training and support resources to help managers, mid-level managers, and leaders build stronger relationships, working relationships with their team, build stronger trust. And of course, there's a host of other things. You get into flexible well-being now. Employees want flexible workplaces. They want mental health is growing, so they want to have support in that area, and all of these things I think play a critical role. Renee.
So those are really good points, and the workplace is really evolving, and there are lots of trends that are coming and going. How do fractionals stay on top of that?
Well, they have to be, back to your earlier point, they have to be aware. They have to be kind of up to speed, so to speak, on some of the issues that are affecting absenteeism and affecting turnover. The workforce is definitely changing. There's no doubt about it. One of the key areas that we see change in, particularly in the younger generation, is they want more meaningful work. They want stronger relationships built on trust and communication. They want work-life balance. Now, the manager and the employee involvement is critical to the retention and absenteeism challenge. Because I think you have a couple of options, I would say. So if you're going to deal with some of these evolving trends, you can do it all at the executive level, the C-suite level. You can ask HR to kind of, find the solutions or find the strategies and they play a role, there's no doubt. But I think it's also important to get managers and employees involved in the retention process and accountable for the retention process. Managers play such a critical role. Like they control and impact things like autonomy and versus micromanagement. They impact things like recognition and showing value for employees. They're the ones that need to have the strong working relationships. They're the ones that have to be able to communicate effectively with their team and bring clarity in roles and help explain issues and things like that. They're the conduit often between the senior leadership group and the employees. So they kind of work in between to make sure that the employee has all of the details and information and support they need to have a rewarding work experience. Further to that, we're seeing things like ESG initiatives, environmental, social, and governance issues that are becoming more important. We're seeing DEI, diversity and equity and inclusion issues. So there's many new things that are emerging or evolving in the workplace that are playing a role in that retention and absenteeism puzzle.
Okay, very good. So what are considered acceptable levels of turnover and retention, and how can fractional executives, anyway, and any business leaders in general help organizations achieve those metrics?
Yeah, I think that first of all, we do recognize that all industries are different. You'll see much higher turnover rates in, say, hospitality and retail than you will in maybe banking or financial. So every industry is a little bit different. What I encourage organizations to do, and fractional executives as well, is pick a number. What is acceptable to your organization? What can you live with? And if you say, all right, we don't want to be above 15% in our turnover because it's impacting this and it's costing more or whatever those challenges are, maybe it's 10% that you want to live with. Maybe it's 20%. But you have to have something as a guideline or a benchmark that says, hey, we're above that number. Something's quite not right here. And we need to be proactive in trying to resolve this to get our retention improved or retain our talent better, I guess. So that's one of the key things. I think the second thing is to understand why employee retention is important. As I mentioned earlier, instead of retention, I see many organizations focusing on employee acquisition or talent acquisition. But the reality is, if you're going to be successful in retention, it has to be a commitment and it has to be a priority. That way, you get some budget dollars to get the strategies in place that you need. You get the resources that you need. You get maybe the support that you need. So first of all, take a look at why it's important to your organization. I think organizations also need to set goals and objectives with their employee retention. And there's a series of metrics that we offer, we have, that we help clients with. And I think metrics can play a couple of roles. They can measure where employee retention challenges exist in the organization based on maybe it's generation, age issues, maybe it's the sex of the employee. You're seeing more with female versus male. The role or position might have an impact. You can look at things departmentally or divisionally. So that's one aspect of measuring, goals and metrics. And the second is whether employee retention and strategy programs implemented are progressing. Are they making improvements? Are they showing reductions in employee turnover rates? So those are a couple of metrics that I think can help with that, measuring how the workplace is evolving.
I think a lot of companies make the mistake of believing that their product is their greatest competitive advantage, but it's really their people, because it's the
So
people
true.
that are not just customer service, but like all across the board, the developers, the salespeople, the the fulfillment people. I mean, like whatever it is you're doing in your company, your people are driving everything. Um, are there industries that that are specifically reluctant to focus on or are to to focus on employee retention?
Oh, I think traditionally there are a few that maybe come to mind. I think, for example, the hospitality sector with hotels and restaurants and bars and things like that. I think you may see a more transient workforce. And by that, I mean people are maybe students that are working to support themselves as they work towards their education and their degree. You may see some part-timers that are working. It's maybe not as critical, and I could be,
Lower paid jobs, right?
yeah, I could be
They won't
inaccurate in some of this.
invest. They
Yeah,
won't invest in the people that end up actually, their frontline people are paid the
yeah,
least, and they are
yeah.
the most important.
They
Yeah,
are. You're absolutely right,
yeah,
and they have such an impact on the success of customer relations and things. And another area that maybe you see a little bit of this is retail.
yeah,
Some of the
yes,
turnover within the retail, and those are traditionally high turnover sectors.
right.
Um, so, and then I think you see some other ones that are starting to focus a little bit more on it because they're recognizing the impact, but historically it hasn't been so. And I would suggest that hospitals and healthcare, you see a
Yes.
real challenge right now with nurse retention. And not only that, you're seeing challenges with a labor shortage. So it's not always easy to recruit the
Is
replacements that
that
you need.
specific to Canada or Canada and the US?
No, it's definitely Canada and the U.S. and I might even go as far to say that is a global challenge as countries and healthcare organizations worldwide struggle to bring, the cost of healthcare is growing up, the challenges and the demands of healthcare is going up. As we try to, become healthier across the board, and there's a multitude of health issues that they need to deal with. So it's a growing concern.
Okay. So how can fractional executives identify and address those disconnects within an organization that contribute to the turnover and absenteeism problem?
Yeah, I think I'd respond this way, Renee. First, again, I'll repeat that it's critical to understand where the problems are, where the disconnects and frustrations that are, and psychologists have told us for years, or decades probably, that humans make major decisions mostly based on emotions and feelings versus logic and reason. So ultimately, there's two driving factors, I think, in retention and absenteeism improvements. One is building positive emotions and feelings, recognition, having trust and good relationships and communication and those kind of things. And you want to maximize those. You want to find moments where you can thank somebody or recognize that they did this, or have a conversation about their personal life. So it helps build the relationship and helps create understanding. So those are the ones we want to try and maximize. On the other side of the equation, we have those negative feelings that we want to minimize. And every job has its own career frustrations and challenges and problems that can lead to anger and disappointment and all kinds of negative emotions that eventually, if they accumulate, and you're seeing more of those than those positive emotions, when they get that call from the recruiting agency about a position or a career, they might say, "Yeah, tell me more. I'm not too happy with what's going
Yeah,
on right here." The
yeah,
other thing that I wanted to mention is that there are a variety of tools out there, and we offer some, and of course there's others, but we call them tools, assessment tools or diagnostics that can, provide insight into what employees' feelings are and what their frustrations are. And this information is invaluable to really build strategy and plan strategy. Without it, you're shooting in the blind, so to speak. And
Yes.
you're hoping a hit and miss. And the last thing that I'll mention on this is that all employees, all of us are human. We all have individual and unique and personal needs and goals. And I think sometimes when retention strategy is planned, it's planned holistically from the corporate setting. All right, we're going to implement this program. It's available to everybody. Well, the reality is that maybe Mary or Fred or Hank don't necessarily need that. They have other goals and other needs. So I think this is, again, where the managers play such a crucial role, is to help kind of understand employees a little bit, understand their strengths, understand their challenges, determine where they can support them a little bit, understand, what career direction they want to go and what kind of work experience they want. And all of those things, if they take the time to work with employees and talk to employees, these kind of things can be important in improving.
If you don't mind, I would love it, Doug, if you took the time to explain the process that you use, because you talked about providing assessments and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a specific process that you employ when you're hired, you get into a company? What do you do? How do you figure it out?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's what we call a 3-step process. And the first step primarily is I mentioned earlier, understanding the why. Why do you want to improve employee retention? Why is it important to the company? Why do you want to improve employee absenteeism? What are those issues? How are those issues impacting you right now? Because I think when we get to the point, as I mentioned, about becoming a priority, if it's going to be a priority and you're going to invest money in strategy, you want to know that you're doing something that's important to the organization. So that's the first step. And in conjunction with that, we look at the costing behind it. And we have some formulas that can be used to help determine the cost of absenteeism and the cost of turnover. Because I think if you're going to look at an ROI, you have to, first of all, understand the cost. And once you do understand the cost, then you can say, all right, if we invest, let's say your cost is $200,000. And if you invest in $30,000 in improvements to your retention strategies, there's a pretty strong ROI there if you can achieve success. And then the second step for us is to use the tools and diagnostics that I mentioned earlier to understand where some of the disconnects are, where some of the frustrations are. And the third step is really centered around customizing solutions to address those needs, get the managers, employees involved, and also build programs that have what we call the foundational building blocks that are the underlying factors in building sustainable retention. And there's a variety of factors that are necessary to really make sure you're positioned well and that you're going to achieve the goals that you want with retention, but it has to be built on a strong foundation. And one other thing maybe to mention here is that, I'm involved in the HR.com advisory board. And for the last 4 or 5 years now, we've run a state of employee retention survey analysis to better understand the issues and challenges and what steps people are taking and so on. And one of the questions there is, where are you at in your employee retention strategy? And the potential responses are beginning, ad hoc, intermediate, advanced, and top notch. So there's a natural progression there that, maybe you are just starting out you decided that it's important and you're not sure where to go and you're trying a few different things. Maybe, the intermediate one centers mostly around financial and benefit packages. They will help you retain your employees, but there's much more beyond that. And I think that's where you get into the advanced and top-notch programs where you really have integrated programs. There's goals and metrics. there's objectives and things like that.
Okay, very good. So, um, I think you answered this question. You know, you can definitely achieve a strong ROI with by investing in employee retention strategies. Um, what could fractional executives do to advocate for that? Because they don't always
Yeah,
get to, they have teams that they're responsible for, but they have to be able to still have the right conversation with the right people
yeah,
to show that this is a valuable thing to do. And because so many companies say they want employee retention, but really only pay lip service to doing things, or they do some very basic things.
yeah. Well, I think fraction executives, probably have to understand the issues, and then they have to build a business case. And, by that, I mean that they can take a look at how it's impacting the organization operationally, how it's impacting the organization from a financial standpoint, and build a business case around why it's necessary to have improvements. I mentioned there is a strong ROI, but I think at the same time, retentions, it's not a bad magic bullet. It's not a band-aid solution. It's not flipping a light switch on or anything. You have to make it a commitment to retain your talent. Because when I mentioned those 5 levels, ad hoc, beginning, intermediate, advanced, the reality is if you want to maximize your return on retention, it's not going to be done with ad hoc programs. It's
Yeah.
not going to be done with beginning programs. It takes a commitment. You have to see the value in this and then, take the progressive steps and to build strong retention strategies and policies and programs and things like that. So it's and that comes from the commitment to provide the resources and the budgets and the training and the support and all those things. But there's definitely strong ROIs because the cost of retention and absenteeism for, let's say, a 200 or 300 employee company can literally be in the millions. If you're
Yes.
losing a lot of employees, or high absenteeism rates, it can be a significant or a serious financial drain. So
Yes.
there is value in doing this, and there is strong returns. Just a
There's
couple of other points. Maybe I think other things are. I think fractional executives are in the unique position that they can bring fresh perspective and expertise. And I think that's important in objectively looking at the issues, using their expertise to try and understand them in more detail, and then I guess presenting solutions or presenting ideas so that they can maximize their value and their contribution to the organization. Other things, and include like fostering open communication, and trying to ensure that employees are recognized and appreciated for their work, helping them with career path and growth opportunities, supporting work-life balance. And we've talked about some of these before, but those are also all important.
Yes, yeah, very good. I really appreciate your taking the time to speak with me today, Doug. I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything else you would like to add? How can people get in touch with you, Doug? I think that's
Yeah,
important.
yeah, it is. We have the website Manage to Retain, and that's spelled, it's actually www manage, like the word manage, the number 2, not the word, but the number 2, and then the word retain, RETAIN.com. My personal email, I'll offer that as well, is dbrown. So it's dbrown at managetoretain.com. And those are
Excellent.
probably the quickest ways to get in touch with me. And I'd welcome any opportunity to talk further. And I've enjoyed this as well, Renee. It's been a pleasure to chat and talk with you about this subject. It's kind of dear and passionate to my heart, and
Yeah.
we're hoping that we can help
And mine,
organizations make
mine,
improvements.
mine too, actually, Doug. Maybe you know this about me. I think you do. There was a time in my career when I was providing leadership training and all around employee engagement. So there's a real connection there between what you do and the things I used to do and the book that I wrote and blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a thing, people quit people, they don't quit companies. And if if the people within an organization are top notch and are great communicators and are respectful, if you can create that kind of a respectful environment, you're more likely um, to grow as a company and
Yeah.
retain
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
along
And culture, building the desired cultures. And,
everything. Yeah,
but I know
it's not just about the company barbecue, you know?
that, oh, you're absolutely right. Or the pool table or the special coffee
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
It goes deeper
that's
than that. And, but I
much
do
deeper.
want people to recognize, just maybe as a closing statement, there are solutions out there. I think, don't get discouraged. It's not an easy thing to, as I said earlier, flipping a switch or something like that. It takes time, it takes effort, but there are solutions out there, and these problems can be addressed. But they need some structure. They
Yes.
need some support, and they need the proper approach and some of those fundamental building blocks that I mentioned earlier as well. I think if you can get those in place, you're much better to progress with retaining your talent.
Like all things in business, Doug, everything is a process that requires patience
Yeah.
and
Yes.
structure.
Yeah. It does.
So,
It does.
so you have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
I will be in touch with you soon.
Okay. You as well. And thanks so much, Renee. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.